I just watched a video by Professor Corey Anton where he's trying to carve out a position somewhere between, as he puts it, theism, panpsychism, and eliminative materialism. So he's trying to avoid what I think he would call this sort of false dichotomy that I've been laying out in some of my recent videos, where I've been talking about this sort of crossroads between an evolutionary panpsychism on the one hand, and on the other hand, an eliminative materialism. And that at this particular moment in the history of philosophy, or the history of, reflective consciousness or thought regarding the situation that human beings find themselves in here on Earth, beneath the sky, in a universe, and all of that, I think the position we're faced with now, given modern science, given contemporary politics, given the state of religion today, the sorry state of religion and religious institutions today, the only two positions available to us are panpsychism and materialism. Now, this is a distinction that I'm getting from the media theorist Steven Shaviro, who has written several books, including Without Criteria, on Whitehead, Deleuze, Kant, and aesthetics as ontology, really. And then more recently, Shaviro has written a book on so-called speculative realism, where it's called The Universe of Things, where he explores Whitehead's thought again. And so Shaviro has laid out this crossroads between a kind of eliminativism, where consciousness and even life are in some sense accidental, temporary emergences, maybe, that ultimately are only appearances. And what's finally real are the material particles and the laws by which they unfold. But even those laws could be mere appearances. And so these really radical materialists like Gwentan Mesu, for example, will say that really to be a materialist means to affirm just pure chaos, hyper chaos, a contingency so radical, so fundamental that it itself becomes necessary, that contingency becomes the only necessity. That's Mesu's materialism, truly eliminative materialism. Another speculative realist thinker, Ray Brassier, will defend a kind of extinction, a logic of extinction, where the goal of philosophy is not to contemplate death, rarely to contemplate death, but to die, to realize that what one takes to be one's own reflective consciousness is in fact an illusion, and that we are just biomechanisms playing out some deterministic set of laws, mathematically determined in advance, right? And that really to be enlightened is to release oneself from the illusion or the delusion of being some sort of a free, conscious, imaginative, creative actor participating in a larger cosmic drama. For the eliminativist, that form of participatory meaning-making and co-creation becomes an illusion. And I think there is a strong contingent of thinkers who, they're atheists, they're reductionists, they're champions of science, modern science, and its ability to predict and control nature. And they have a huge, dark shadow, which, involves, well, for one thing, this whole mentality, science as, or knowledge as power, science as technology, science has the ability to control and predict nature. Right? This whole notion of instrumental rationality, it has a huge shadow in it. We see it in the ecological crisis, mass extinction, climate change. Right? Modern science and technology has fundamentally reshaped the Earth, and I'm sorry to say it's not for the better. And if there was any sort of epistemological test of the validity of science, of this particular form of science, reductionistic materialism, right, then it would be the results that it has on the vitality of the community of life on this planet. And so if that's the test, it's clear that scientific materialism is invalid. It has failed not only to describe the universe, but to provide human beings, human civilization, with a viable cosmology, with a livable way of inhabiting the Earth. Instead, we've been, as a result of this kind of knowledge, this way of knowing, we've been destroying the Earth because we haven't recognized Earth as Gaia, as a living being, a sentient creature, not identical in the way that, to say that Gaia is alive, that Earth is an organism, is not to attribute a sort of human kind of consciousness to the Earth, a sort of, reflective, deliberative, um, free in some sense, reflexive in some sense, consciousness. To say that the Earth is alive is to say that the Earth is present to itself. Yes, it has experience. It is experiential. It lives through its process, its becoming. There is something it is alike to be the Earth as a whole. But to say that is not to attribute consciousness. Sort of, if you think about the way Western civilization has imagined its God as a sort of intelligent designer that stands beyond the world and shapes the world from the outside, that sort of image of intelligence makes it very difficult to understand nature, to understand organism, self-organization, which is a whole different way of imagining intelligence. Right? There's a sort of deistic understanding of intelligence as a kind of design, and even whether you're the theologian William Paley or the first modern reductionistic biologist Charles Darwin, you're still working within that paradigm of design. Whether you call it divine intelligence or divine selection or natural selection, you're still thinking of nature as a machine. And what's fascinating about 20th century science, whether you're talking about quantum theory or complexity theory, the way that quantum and complexity theories force us to adapt evolutionary theory, it's very clear that life evolved, right? And Darwin provided a mechanism which would account for that evolution over vast spans of geological time. But there's no reason to believe that that's the only mechanism. There's no reason to believe that evolution, that is, diversification of life from some common origin into the many species of plants, fungus, and animals that we see alive on the planet today, that process has occurred, I don't think can actually be explained solely by Darwin's theory of random mutation under conditions of scarce resources and inherited, where these random mutations are inherited by offspring. I don't think that particular theoretical arrangement of causal actors is enough to explain the entirety of the phenomenon we see unfolding before us and the evidence we see of how it has unfolded in the past. We need more than Darwin to understand this, and complexity theory and quantum theory, I think, and thermodynamics, I think, help us do this in a way that Darwin could not have foreseen